Leon, the legendary brawler who once ruled Brawl Stars with his deadly burst damage and stealthy plays. Since his release in 2018, he's been a brawler that Supercell just couldn't leave untouched. From powerful buffs to major nerfs, Leon's journey is one of highs and lows. But despite all the changes, he remains a fan favorite to this day. So what made Leon so dominant back then? And why do players still love him, even though he's not the monster he used to be? I am Simbi, and without further ado, let's break down Leon's story, his balance changes, and why he still holds a special place in Brawl Stars. Leon isn't just a lone wolf, he's part of a mysterious family. While much of his backstory is left for players to piece together, we know he shares a special connection with two other iconic brawlers, Nita and Bo. Nita, with her spirit bear Bruce, is Leon's sister. The two of them are fiercely protective of each other, and though their playstyles differ, there's a bond between them that runs deep. Then there's Bo, a wise and powerful tracker, who many speculate could be their father. Together, the three form a sort of mystical trio, tied by nature and the wilderness, fighting to protect their land. While Leon's stealth and cunning contrast with Nita's raw power and Bo's precision, their relationship gives depth to his character, making him more than just a stealthy assassin. Diving into the game itself, in the very first days of his release, his super allowed him to disappear for a full 10 seconds, long enough to close in on unsuspecting enemies and shred them to pieces. At 500 damage per blade up close, even the toughest tanks had no chance. Leon was a menace, especially in solo and duo showdown, where you could wipe out an entire lobby before they even knew you were there. In other words, Leon was absolutely overpowered. When he was invisible, the only way you could ever see him is if you managed to hit him. That meant he could literally be right next to you. But if you don't hit him, you won't know he's there until he wipes you out, of course. Of course, with great power comes great responsibility, or in Leon's case, an immediate emergency nerf. Just after 2 days after his release on 7th December 2018, Supercell made it so if he's 4 tiles near you, then you can see him, and that is still how it is today. However, as you expect, this itself was not enough, and Leon managed to remain fairly strong. His invisibility still gave him the upper hand in most battles, and his close-range damage was deadly. So, as expected, Supercell kept at it. Just a month later, he received another pretty significant nerf. First, his main attack damage was decreased to 460 from 500 at close range. Also, his super duration decreased to 8 seconds from 10. And while these changes definitely toned down his raw power, Leon was still a force to be reckoned with. But things were only about to get worse for him. In February 2019, Supercell once again took out the nerf hammer. His main attack damage was once again decreased to 440 from 460. And the number of hits necessary to charge his super was increased to 9 from 8. His dominance was slipping. Just 2 months later, in April 2019, Leon received another significant nerf. His super duration was again decreased to 7 seconds from 8. He wasn't the one-shot machine he used to be. Slowly but surely, Leon was finding it harder to survive in the meta. And for Leon, a brawler who relied on his speed, stealth, and high burst damage, every second shaved off his invisibility was devastating. However, that seemed to put him in a pretty good spot for a few months because he received no changes for about 3 months until his Invisi-Heal star power was added when they actually did the star power update. And at first, it only healed him 600 health per second, which didn't seem to be enough because only a month later they increased it from 600 healing per second to 800. Finally, some love for Leon. Anyways, his first ever buff was to his star power. But a buff is a buff, I guess. The meta was shifting fast, and apparently his Invisi-Heal star power needed another buff. Because in October 2019, the healing was increased from 800 to 1000, which to this day it's still at 1000. But you guessed it, Leon's super duration was once again decreased to 6 seconds from 7. Which, if you remember, it's still at 6 seconds to this day, so it has not been touched since then. But yeah, at first, his super lasted almost twice as long as it does right now. So imagine that. Imagine going invisible as Leon and being invisible for almost twice as long. The good old days. As you can see, 2019 was a harsh year for Leon, but things were about to change. By 2020, Leon was no longer the monster he had been at launch, and he had hard times adapting to the meta, especially in 3v3 modes. He just wasn't really cutting it. He had nothing to really get into the enemies. His max range damage was really bad, and he really had no approach options. It was kind of hard to get a super, and overall, he was just seen as a brawler that was way better in solo and duo showdown than anything else. Supercell noticed this, and in February 2020, he received a buff. His main attack damage was increased to 178 from 103 at max range per blade. This was a significant buff because they actually increased his long-range damage by almost twice as much, which made him playable in some 3 versus 3 modes. A month later in March, he finally received his gadget called Clone Projector. Upon release, this gadget was pretty useless because the clone used to disappear with a single shot, and this was considered as one of the worst gadgets added to the game. And so, Leon's journey continued, a slow descent from top-tier assassin to mid-tier pick. Supercell had to do something. In July 2020, he received another buff. His main attack damage was increased to 460 from 440, and Miss Max range damage was increased to 186 from 178. Also, his Clone Projector gadget clone no longer disappeared with a single hit, but instead has damage dealt to it doubled, which was a solid buff. However, Leon was once again struggling to find his place in the meta, and was not viable in 3 versus 3, which again was a problem. That's why in December 2020, Supercell tried giving him an edge by increasing his Smoke Trail's star power speed by 6%. So it was 24% movement speed bonus to 30%. I think that was an attempt to make it, so then if he got his super in 3v3 mode, he could get into the enemies faster. But a month after that, it seemed that didn't help very much because his damage received another buff and his supercharge rate got a buff. So he's getting buffs back to back over and over again. Leon was once so powerful that within 2 days of his release, Supercell had no choice but to issue emergency nerfs to stop him from completely dominating the game. But as the months passed, he found himself on the opposite end of the spectrum, constantly receiving buffs, yet never quite fitting into the 3 versus 3 meta. That is, until July 2021, when everything changed and Leon's journey took a dramatic turn. In July 2021, Leon received his second gadget called Lollipop Drop, and finally, after so much time, Leon managed to find his place in some 3v3 mode because this gadget helper him and his team in so many ways. It was just a good gadget. This gadget was helping him approach people. Also, the invisibility was really helpful when doing other people's shots. In that time, this gadget was so good because it never decayed health. Leon was finally back. But this didn't last long because in October 2021, Supercell added a decay to the health of his gadget. They obviously made it. So then, if people couldn't deal with it, it would at least go away after a certain amount of time. Everything went back to normal. After some time, Leon once again disappeared from the 3 versus 3 modes and was again only viable in solo and duo showdown. However, according to Supercell, Leon was balanced because he had no balance changes until October 2023, when Supercell increased his Smoke Mythic gear duration boost to 2 seconds from 1. Then in December 2023, Leon finally received his hypercharge, and it was and still is one of the good ones, so this was definitely a good thing for him. In March 2024, Leon received his final balance change, and it was, you guessed it, another nerf. His main attack damage was decreased to 144 from 192 at max range. Also, his supercharge rate was slightly decreased. Despite all the balance changes, despite all the nerfs, Leon remains one of the most beloved brawlers in Brawl Stars. His journey has been one of highs and lows, from a game-breaking assassin to a more balanced yet still powerful pick. But his unique playstyle, combined with his mysterious backstory and family ties, make him a brawler that players continue to love. Today, Leon sits comfortably in the mid-tier of brawlers. He's no longer the fast-killing beast he once was, but he still shines in the hands of skilled players who know how to use his stealth and gadgets effectively. For the players who have mastered him, Leon still feels like the invisible predator that lurks in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And that is why Leon will always be a legend. Leon, the stealthy assassin that everyone loves. This was all for today's video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Leon's history, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more Brawl Stars content. Who's your favorite brawler? And who do you think needs a buff or nerf next? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, stay stealthy and stay legendary.